Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm Katie Earle. I coordinate our program, and I work for Senior Services, and I'm joined here with my with my colleague Chuck Banas. Chuck helps us out tremendously here in the county, and also especially for University Express. So we're really appreciative to him for everything he does and for being here with us this morning. So, quick housekeeping. It looks like we've got a lot of regulars on. So, we are recording the session and I'll try to post it in the near future. And feel free to type your questions in the Q&A panel. I've got mine up. I know Chuck has his up. So, we'll try to answer all your questions here this morning. And quickly, we'll thank our sponsors, which is my Department of Senior Services, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, Excelsior Orthopedics, and Wegmans for all their support. And don't forget about us at Senior Services. We're here to help you however we can. We're 858-8526. All right, star of our show this morning. Chuck works for Erie County's IT department, supporting the county staff with technology and helps coordinate the county's social media. He's also a part-time urban planner, hockey player, lover of all things Buffalo, and perennially disappointed Sabres fan. Chuck, thank you. It's all yours.
Thanks, Katie. Uh, well, today, I guess everyone knows today's topic is protecting your online privacy. Uh, as a member and employee of the county in DISS, which is our IT department, I come across a lot of these security issues all the time. And I have a lot of personal experience with this stuff as well. And this would be a fun presentation on a little bit of the history of the internet, why the internet is the way it is today, and what you can do to protect yourself online. So let me pull up my presentation here. We can get started. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, is everyone seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, great. And you can hear me too, Katie, right?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Hopefully no more glitches for today. Okay, again, my name is Chuck Banas. I work for Division of Information Support Services, which is a fancy phrase for our IT department here at the county. Everyone is online these days. Basically, all of our major aspects of our financial lives are online, our personal lives through social media. We do so much stuff on the internet, on the web. It's almost hard to imagine life without it, but it wasn't all that long ago. Of course, we didn't really have this whole infrastructure, this worldwide web of information and services available to us. Of course, when most people think of being online, we think of the devices that we have, specifically smartphones, tablets, laptops, and of course, our desktops at home. But there's this whole other range of connected devices, everything from dog food bowls to toothbrushes to your refrigerator and your thermostat. All of this stuff is connected online, and these are all, of course, potential sources of information or vulnerabilities, because no system is perfect. And this whole category of connected smart devices is called the Internet of Things, where all of our various devices, not just our computers and smartphones, are somehow connected to the internet. And of course, so many other things are starting to be connected as well. Things like our power plants and self-driving cars, and even just our regular old-fashioned driving cars are highly connected to the internet. Trains, transit, all this stuff is being connected to the internet now. And all of these are, of course, potential sources of security risks and vulnerabilities, because again, no system is perfect. And in the past year, of course, we've all been connected, perhaps even more than normal. Many of us are working from home. We're trying to bring the office into the home, and this line between office and home is being ever more blurred and ever more connected to the internet. And our personal lives are even really intertwined with our work lives. And as the internet's grown and all of these new devices have come online and more of our services are connected online, there are, of course, lots of vulnerabilities. And if you take a look at this timeline from the bottom, it starts about 2006 and goes right up to this year. These are the number and scale of data breaches over the last 15 years. And if you take a look up toward the top of the list there, toward 2021, you can see that the number and scale of breaches has been getting larger and larger. And this is, of course, as all of the systems administrators of all of these systems throughout the world, the World Wide Web Consortium trying to set new standards for security. Everybody's been working to try to combat this stuff. And you think in some ways that the problem would be getting better over time, but it's actually been getting a bit worse. The last few years, I think alarm bells have been ringing throughout the industry. And you even see companies like Apple promoting all of their products in terms of privacy and security. And most of the other manufacturers of devices and software use security and privacy as a selling point as well these days. They're working hard on it. What we're going to talk about, another thing, another slide here. Of course, the United States is the biggest target for cyber hacks in the world by far. Even though, of course, we only have something like 4% of the world's population. Of course, the internet started in the U.S. We're probably one of the most, if not the most, connected societies in the world, and it's probably no wonder that we're the epicenter of all of that nefarious activity. And of course, you don't have to look at everything on this slide, but if you look at the leading cause of cyber attacks and hacks, it's 41% is to get money somehow. It's essentially a money theft scheme. There are other things too, like there's political stuff. About 1 in 4 have something to do with cyber war, and companies competing with each other, trying to steal each other's intellectual property, things like that. But by far and away, of course, it's monetary theft. This is an interesting statistic too. It says that younger people actually do lose more often than older people to fraud, and that includes online fraud as well. But the older you get, the larger the sums can be. Of course, older folks tend to have a bit more money. That seems natural. But the incidence of fraud actually goes down with age, but the amount goes up. So there are a lot of vulnerabilities to our system, and we're going to get into a little bit of why that is. But there's only really two categories of vulnerability, of holes or gaps or flaws in the system. One are the software and hardware parts of the systems themselves, how they're designed. Sometimes there are defects in the code, little loopholes that hackers can use to gain access to a system. The other, which is probably in the grand scheme of things, the biggest culprit is people, human behavior. And this is the same as it's been for thousands of years. If somebody wants to take your money, they're going to try to trick you into doing something that you don't necessarily want to do. And we'll get into that. This presentation here is going to focus a little less on the systems and a bit more on the people side of things, about what you can do to educate yourself, change your online behaviors, and become a smarter user of the internet. Most people, of course, are familiar with the tried and true phishing scams, these emails you get from the Nigerian prince who's in prison and just needs you to send them $500 and they'll release $10 million to you once they get out of prison. These scams are pretty obvious. People are still falling for them. So you do still see quite a few of these emails floating about. A lot of spam filters that you get from your email provider will filter this stuff out. So most people won't even see this stuff, or you only see it once in a while. The one on the left, I don't know if you can even read it. It's one of the best ones I've ever seen. This was a letter on behalf of a Nigerian astronaut who was trapped in space. So he needed you to send him some money so they could bring him down from orbit. I don't know how many people responded to this, but I guarantee you it was a non-zero number of people. So why do we have the internet that we do, and why is it a little bit kind of like the Wild West of security? Well, we're going to go through not every point on this timeline, but the internet goes a lot further back than most people realize. There are a lot of claims to who invented the internet, but really it was a combination of technologies and people and systems and efforts over the years that kind of came together over several decades to form the internet that we know of. It goes way back to even 1958 when the modem was invented. Modem stands for modulator demodulator, and it's just a way of converting an analog signal into digital and back again. And you can remember the old dial-up modems that we all had, but modems are used throughout the whole chain and a network of the internet whenever you're converting from an analog signal to a digital one or back again. If you have cable internet at home, that's actually an analog signal coming into your home, which is then converted by your cable box or maybe your Apple TV or smart TV or something like that into a digital signal. And any information, of course, that's going the other way out to the internet through that same system is converted from a digital signal to an analog signal so it can get to the cable company's servers, where it's, of course, then converted back to digital. So that whole process started with inventions in the 50s. And then in the mid 60s, the ARPA, which had been started by Eisenhower in response to Sputnik, started developing the idea of the ARPANET, and the kind of laid the foundation, really the backbone for today's internet. And you can see that right around 1966 there. We'll zoom in a little bit on that. And what ARPA is and was, they've changed their name several times from DARPA to ARPA and then back again. Stands for the Advanced Research Projects Agency, and originally was an arm of the US government and the military to develop communication systems that could be redundant and resilient to nuclear attack. So if you took out one part of the system or several cities, other parts of the system could still communicate and kind of communicate around the destruction. And the idea was to connect military installations, government installations, and eventually, of course, things like universities. These were the days, of course, when computers were big and they filled entire rooms. And not much thought was given to how this might expand in the future decades. And not a whole lot of thought was given to security at that point. So by the time the 1970s rolled around, we were converging with a lot of different technologies and protocols. Basically, the language of the internet, how data is communicated, transmitted, and received was being worked out in the early 70s. And so by the mid to late 80s, we started to get things like email and basic messaging, stuff like that across the internet. And those of you who went to college, perhaps in the mid to late 80s, might remember some of these services coming online and being able to essentially send email from, a student could send email to another student from UB to, say, Fredonia State. And that was like the coolest thing ever. So by the 1990s, we started to get this web around the world of all of these connected computers, usually government or university-based systems. And in 1990, Tim Berners-Lee from CERN in Switzerland developed what was called the World Wide Web, essentially the framework for it, and HTML, which is the language that virtually every web page is built with. And by the way, he developed it on a Next box. This is a little bit of trivia here. Next was a computer company started in the late 80s by Steve Jobs after he was ousted from Apple. He went and created another company that was started to build a lot of the computers that he really envisioned the Macintosh was supposed to become. And it was a great company, but he didn't want to compete in the same market as Apple. He wanted to go for more of the business and educational markets. So the computers were really advanced for their time, very expensive. You could easily spend 8 or 10 grand on the things. And CERN in Switzerland, big research institution, obviously had a bunch of them. And another bit of trivia, of course, the operating system that Next had was eventually bought by Apple. And then when Steve came back to Apple in the mid 90s, they used that operating system, and it forms the foundation of the Macintosh OS, the iPhone operating systems, the iPad, all those Apple devices today. Just a little bit of trivia there. But Tim Berners-Lee developed HTML in the early 90s, and by 1991, 92, we started to see the first actual web pages. This is the internet as we really know it today, started right then and there. And by 1996, there was more electronic mail being sent than postal mail. So that's generally the foundation of the internet here. But we're going to go through 7 steps. Some of these are super simple and won't require a whole lot of explanation, but some people don't really even know about. So when you're off on the internet, there are lots of things that you can do to promote your own internet hygiene, as they say. The biggest one you can do is to choose a great password. And if you notice, I put the plural on passwords. We'll talk a little bit about that. You want to keep all of your software updated. This includes your operating system and the other applications that you use, because companies that write the software are always discovering little vulnerabilities, and you want to keep up with the latest that's out there. Don't ever let your machine get too far behind. You want to install software from trusted sources and only from trusted sources. You want to avoid public Wi-Fi or use a VPN. We'll talk a little bit about that. Check your social media privacy. Everyone seems to be on social media these days to some extent or another. Make sure you check your privacy settings on there. All of the social media platforms have privacy settings. I lock mine down as much as I can. Sometimes this stuff can be kind of confusing and it's hard to find. We'll talk a little bit about that. We monitor your bank accounts. Your financial stuff is probably online, and I'm sure you do online banking, so that's important. And we're going to talk about some common sense tips as well at the end, stuff that you may not even know about. Maybe it's not so much common sense. So first off, choose a great password. There are several different strategies here that you want to combine when creating a password. You definitely want to use upper and lowercase letters. You want to put some numbers in there, put some symbols in there, some special symbols like the caret or asterisk or the ampersand or at sign. And you want to make it greater than 8 characters. 8 or greater actually is considered to be safe. This is a great little tip, is choose a phrase or even like a musical tune that you know really, really well, or a poem or a limerick or something like that. And then you can replace some of the letters with symbols or numbers. Like in the case of, you can turn an I into an exclamation point or an S into a 5. And let's just say we wanted to do the itsy bitsy spider crawled up the water spout. Everyone knows that little nursery rhyme. And you can make a password like that. Capital T, the and then the exclamation point, capital B, 5, CUTW5. And if you kind of spell that out, the itsy bitsy spider crawls up the water spout. And this is really easy to remember for you and almost impossible to guess for anybody else. Of course, you want to create a different password for each login. That is the best security you can have. One of the biggest problems with passwords is people reuse them constantly. So if there's a data breach, say at your bank or some other service that you have online, maybe on a dating site that you're on or something like that, what often happens is people will, if there's a data breach, hackers will take that information, your email address plus your password, and try it on like your local lending institutions or other common services online, and they will break into other parts of your financial life in particular, just through learning one password that they gained from one data breach on one system. So use different passwords for all of your different logins, and especially don't use the same passwords that you use for everything else for your banks and other financial information online. And if you have a problem with remembering all those passwords, use a password manager. There are a lot of different great ones out there, like onepassword.com and lastpass.com. I'm not endorsing these by any means. Do your research. One of the best sources out there is pcmagazine.com, pcmag.com. They do a ton of reviews of all of these types of services, and that's a great place to start when you're doing your research for password managers. The Mac, of course, if you're running a Mac or any of the iOS devices, it has a password manager built in, a really good one. Doesn't have some of the bells and whistles that the other services have, but it's completely built into the Mac OS, and it goes across all of your devices, your iPhone, a Mac if you have it, an iPad, things like that. So there's one built into the Mac that's really, really good. Chrome has a password manager as well that's fully encrypted. It's apparently quite secure. It's built right into Chrome if you use the Chrome browser as well. So you want to keep your software updated. Again, you get a lot of pop-ups probably on your desktop machines and occasionally on your mobile devices for software updates. Make sure you do those. There are settings, of course, where you can have it automatically update. You don't even really have to think about it. So it checks every day or every week and automatically downloads and installs the updates for you. For most people, that's the best way to do it. As an IT guy, I like to be notified of what backups, what updates are available, and install them when I want to install them. There's just a little extra level of scrutiny that I want to apply to it as an information technology guy and a guy who deals with supporting computers. But for most people, have this done automatically. And that goes, and by the way, that goes for operating system as well. So there's a lot of settings you can check in, say, Windows or the Mac for system updates to have those done automatically. And for most people, do it automatically and then set it and forget it. And you never have to worry about it. And you'll never be 6 months or a year behind on your updates. Notice that I did not talk about antivirus software yet. And I'm not going to talk too much about it. The jury is still out on how effective a lot of this stuff is. Windows has Defender built into it. That's their brand name for their antivirus and anti-malware layer in the operating system. Of course, the Mac has a lot of that stuff built in as well. So there's already antivirus software running on virtually every device you've got. There are some things occasionally that you might want out of some of the third-party products, like Trend Micro antivirus or Norton Utilities, Norton Security, that might make things a little better. Things like spam filters, email filtering, that you might want. But one of the problems with antivirus software is it tends to slow a lot of computers down. It adds a bit of processing overhead, and it's something else to kind of go wrong on your computer. And I've seen a lot of problems with computer performance with this stuff. So the jury is really still out on whether antivirus software is effective at all. There are some good free versions of antivirus software that's out there. I wouldn't necessarily even pay for it if you want to install it on your machine. AVG makes a free version. They make it kind of hard to download and get to, but they do make a free version. The problem is they are occasionally will ping you to upgrade on a pretty regular basis, so that can be kind of annoying. But there are free versions of software you can get out there. There's another free malware scanner called Malwarebytes, Malwarebytes. I've had a lot of success with that. If a computer I was looking at has some potential malware on it, it's a great scanner to just give it a quick once over to see if there actually is any known variants of malware running around on the thing. Most people, though, won't need antivirus software. It's a little more important on the Windows side, since Windows has a lot more vulnerabilities than the Mac. iOS, which is Apple's mobile operating system for iPhones and iPads, is really well locked down. Apple also vets their software very strictly. So malware on the Apple side isn't nearly as big a problem as it is on the Windows side, but it is still a problem. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can best protect yourself now, independent of what antivirus software you've got, because I've seen people with antivirus software running that still have infected machines. They still have some form of malware on there. One of the biggest things you can do is, once you're installing software, is only install it from trusted sources. This is a big deal. Somehow my mother always seems to end up with software on her Mac, which she has downloaded and installed, and she doesn't know who the developer is. It's maybe a sketchy fly-by-night company of some kind. You go to the website, it seems a little weird. Everything seems a little bit off. That's where she got the software from. So she's no longer an admin of her own Mac. I have admin rights, and she's just a regular user. So to get her to stop doing that, I made it impossible for her to install software, and she's fine with that now. But only do it from trusted sources. If you're installing software from Microsoft, make sure you're doing it from Microsoft.com or from Adobe. Say you go to a site and you say, oh, I can get a free trial of Adobe Photoshop or something like that, and you want to download it. In the browser, if you can see this circled area in red up top, make sure the first thing you should always check when you're browsing is, am I at the site I'm supposed to be at, especially if I'm going to download anything. In this case, if the site isn't adobe.com, just get out of there. Don't even spend another second there. Make sure that if you're going to download from Adobe, that you are actually downloading it from Adobe. The next thing is avoiding public Wi-Fi. I know, or we're going to talk about using a VPN, which is an alternative if you have to use public Wi-Fi. So people love it at coffee houses and airports. They have free Wi-Fi. In many cases, it's unencrypted, although it's becoming less and less common. And so it's highly insecure. So you're broadcasting a lot of information to and from that wireless radio out to the neighborhood, essentially. And you don't know who in the world set that system up. You don't know who's listening or scanning the airwaves for that information. You can get a lot of info on an unencrypted Wi-Fi network from all of the users on that network. A lot of times it's running on old equipment that has severe vulnerabilities. So I don't use public Wi-Fi at all. And if and when I do use it, I use what's called a VPN, a virtual private network. There's a lot of VPN services you can choose from out there. Again, you got to do your research because not all of them seem legitimate or trustworthy. A lot of them out there look a little sketchy as well, but find a good one that has a good reputation. And what a VPN does is essentially, instead of, it basically takes over the internet connection of your computer. And all of your internet traffic to and from your computer actually is scrambled or encrypted right to the VPN server, whatever service you're using, right to one of their servers. And a good VPN service will have servers scattered throughout the world so that no matter where you are, you'll be fairly close to a server, and your data rate will be fairly high. So all of that is encrypted between you and the VPN server. The thing is, of course, you got to be able to trust the VPN service because you're sending all of that information to them. No one else from the outside that communication can see what that information is because it's scrambled, it's encrypted. So make sure you choose a good VPN. The VPN, of course, the VPN server will then go off to the internet and then maybe get the website that you're looking for, or send the information that you're typing in to the website that you're at. That's how a VPN works. So everything is encrypted between your PC and the VPN server, wherever that happens to be. But do your research when you're choosing one. There's a couple good ones out there that usually seem to be at the top of the list, like ExpressVPN or Surfshark. Costs maybe, depending on the tier of their service, 10, 20 bucks a month, something like that. And with most of them, you can stop and start your subscription at any time. You're not locked into, say, a year or something like that. It's usually just monthly. So if you're traveling and you feel you need access to public Wi-Fi at some point, get a VPN. Or most phones will come with a hotspot, by the way, these days. So if your smartphone is it's a little wireless router. So you turn on your hotspot, make sure you set that up on your phone, and you can use your own cellular service as your wireless router. So as long as you have cell service, you have internet service in most cases. Some people don't have hotspot on their cell phone plan. And again, if you want to do your research with any of these services, go to pcmagazine.com. There's a lot of others out there too that are fairly reputable in terms of, I think, Consumer Reports, of course, does a lot of great reviews and comparisons as well, but you got to pay for their service. But do your research. Okay, we're going to get into a little bit of social media privacy right now. Everyone is online with social media, it seems, these days. Some people use it a heck of a lot more than others. But if you haven't checked your privacy settings in a while on Facebook or Twitter, get into those settings and make sure that you've locked it down as much as possible. You may not want your posts to be seen by everybody in the world. You may want only your friends to see them. There are a lot of options to set. Make sure that your information is as secure as you want it or need it to be. And again, this goes for all social media, not just Facebook, but Facebook and Twitter. Facebook by far is the most popular. Twitter is second place. Those are the two that most people concentrate on. But this, of course, goes for Instagram and LinkedIn and things like that. These are all potential sources of personal information that anyone online could potentially have access to if you haven't locked this stuff down. Things like your name, address, even phone number, email, any websites that you might have for yourself. All of that stuff should probably be locked down, and only your friends should be able to see that. And of course, don't friend anybody online that if you don't know who they are. One of the most important things, of course, is monitor your bank accounts. Not only do banks make mistakes, but there are vulnerabilities in every system. And when you do your online banking, we're not just talking about the security on your end, the Wi-Fi that you happen to be connected to, or the strength of your password and things like that. We want you want to go reconcile your balances, and this isn't like a weekly or monthly thing anymore. Do it anytime you log in. Check your balances, make sure your purchases are what you intend them to be. There's a lot of credit card theft these days. So if you use your credit card anywhere, especially at an ATM, there are these little devices that sometimes get stuck right inside the credit card slot in an ATM called a skimmer. And sometimes a sketchy business will have these too. And what it does when you slide that magnetic stripe in there, it actually skims your card information off. So they have all of your credit card info. Keep an eye on that stuff. And it's actually, these days, it's actually much more secure to use a digital payment method like Apple Pay or Android Pay. And there's a bunch of others out there too, offered by PayPal and Venmo, because none of that card information, none of that account information is actually exposed during that transaction. A one-time use code just for that transaction is used, and it can never be used again. So none of your permanent account information is ever exposed during a transaction. I use Apple Pay all the time. The banks love it, and one of the reasons it's starting to proliferate everywhere is because it is so secure. Banks and financial institutions do love it because it massively has decreased the incidence of fraud. We're going to talk a little bit about some common sense tips, which may not be common sense to many people, but a lot of the stuff is sitting right under your nose when you're living your online life. So you can kind of think of your online experience as a stranger coming to your house. Whatever emails you get, whatever website you happen to be at, if it's asking for your information or you're inputting any information at all, you should kind of try to figure out who this entity is, who's asking the question exactly. Make sure, again, if you want to be at adobe.com, make sure you're at adobe.com, and make sure you know who is asking for this information, and that you're almost 100% sure that they are who they say they are. So that's the big first question. Anytime you're giving out information, who's asking? Figure out who that is and make sure that they are who they say they are. Don't give out your social security number really to anybody if they ask for it, especially if it's via email, anything like that. If you're at your financial institution, make 100% sure you're at M&T Bank, you're at their website before you type your social security number into anything. You definitely want to set an unlock passcode for all your devices. A lot of people leave their smartphones wide open. Anyone can unlock the device. Of course, with the fingerprint and face print ID these days, it's becoming easier and easier to unlock your device that way. But make sure you do set an unlock passcode for all your devices, including your desktop, laptop at home. To log in, a lot of people will leave it wide open just because it's super easy. But do not do that. There's basically your entire life is stored on these things, and you want to have some bit of security so that not just anyone can get in. If it's possible, you want to set up two-factor authentication. This is becoming more and more common. A lot of services will ask you for it. Say you're logging into your bank. In order to fully log in, you type in your password, and then it will send, say, a text to your smartphone on it. So that's two factors, basically, two separate ways, often two separate devices that you have to authenticate with in order to fully log in. Set that up wherever it's possible. And it's becoming easier and easier to do that. In fact, we're implementing that at the county right now too. It's pretty much done as far as I know. Of course, we remember the old phishing attacks. Somebody just trying to trick you out of giving them money, not being truthful about who they are. This is an old con. Of course, the adage applies to everything. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Always keep that in mind. Obviously, not just online, but everywhere else in life. So we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to wrap up here with a little bit about some of the basics that you might not know about internet security. Most of our lives is spent in a browser these days. And you may have noticed that some websites are secure, some aren't. This little padlock, take a look at the top there, that appears next to the website. That means that the information between the browser and the web server, where the website is stored, is encrypted the entire way. It's end-to-end encrypted. Google wants everybody to have an encrypted website. So they will increase your search ranking for your website, for instance, if you have a secure and encrypted site. You can still create a website out there that has no encryption, and that will be that will be preceded by HTTP : and then the secure websites are preceded by HTTPS. S stands for secure or security. And it's usually denoted in any browser by the little padlock that you see. If you're giving out any information whatsoever, you want to look for that padlock. Make sure that the website you're giving it to is where you want to be, and make sure it is a secure and encrypted website. Both of those things are important. So HTTPS basically means that between your browser and the internet, you have a secure and encrypted connection. So anything that you type into that website, no one else can intercept or see on its way. So that's very, very important. Look for that. Also, we talked about this again. I know I'm beating this one to death, but it's important. So we're gonna go over it again. Yet another variant of it. You get an email supposedly from Microsoft, and it's saying you need to sign in and reactivate your account. Maybe your account was supposedly temporarily suspended or something like that. There's some urgent message which requires your attention and for you to type in some information. Of course, there are some cues here that this might not be from Microsoft. If you notice, there's no Microsoft branding. And also the grammar is a little weird, and the formatting is a little strange. If you notice the link where it says sign in, reactivate your account now, the hyperlink, there's a couple extra spaces there that don't look right. Everything's formatted. It looks kind of hacked together. This is becoming less and less common, but you still see some pretty amateur emails like this. And of course, if you clicked on that link, which you shouldn't, because there's enough here to tell you that this is a scam of some kind. But if you clicked on that link, it takes you to a website. Looks like a Microsoft website. This is pretty good. It's got all the branding. It's got we're nicely formatted. It looks clean. It doesn't look like an amateur did it. But again, look up at the URL, at the web address up at the top there. That's not Microsoft. Always look at that URL bar. And I know in a lot of browsers these days, that little bar is easy to miss. Oftentimes the whole string, the URL itself, the address is in light gray. It's meant to kind of recede from your attention, and the web page is meant to grab more of your attention visually. Make sure you always look at that. And actually, there are some settings in Chrome and Safari and other browsers where you can get the URL to be look a little bit more prominent. If you notice the actual domain here, carjokester.com, is in black, and the rest of the URL is in gray. So that's meant to at least alert you that, hey, this is the domain that you're at. So that's in black. And if you notice, there's no padlock on this particular one either. So always look for those two things. Make sure you are where you're supposed to be, and make sure you got the padlock. And if not, then close the web page and do not type in any personal information of any kind. So that's basically it. I hope everyone got a little something out of this. There may have been some things you knew already, some things that you didn't. But there's a lot we can all do just with our own personal habits and behaviors to make our online lives much safer. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. That was really wonderful. A lot of great information, stuff I know I need to do better personally too. We have quite a few questions here, and it looks like you'll probably be seeing some of them too, but maybe a few just came to me. So how do you want to handle this? Want me to read them or you to look at them?
Let's see. Let me stop my sharing here, and then we can kind of get into this. Okay. Oh, there's a bunch. Yet there it is. Okay, I guess I will start at the top then. Yeah, is it safer to stay out of social media and only make a minimal number of online accounts? And why take the risks for a few conveniences? Yes, it is. The safest thing you can do is not be online at all. Um, but uh, life is a set of trade-offs like that, and so many other people are living their lives online, and there are so many great services provided online, and even things like banks are staffed less than they used to be because so much of their stuff has been moved to the web. Uh, that you know, normal old school non-internet life is becoming harder and harder. So yes, it's a wise thing to minimize your footprint online, but the best thing to do is just have a little bit of common sense and be a little wary every time you're online about what information you are giving out. Um, if a social media site is asking for a phone number, it doesn't need one necessarily, unless you're setting up two-factor authentication to a via text. If it's asking for an address and you don't feel you need to give it an address, don't give it an address. I've got uh, a side business Facebook page that maybe does need an address, but for your personal social media, probably you don't need your street address on something like that. Don't even necessarily need to give it your hometown or anything like that. But so give every service that you're using as little information as possible, and think about every time you're doing it about, is this really necessary? I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Yeah. Thank you, Chuck.
Um, do I worry that software updates could be fraudulent? Well, the short answer is yes. So when you're updating software, um, make sure that if it's from Microsoft, make sure the Microsoft updater is the thing that's asking you for a software update. For instance, if you're browsing a website and you get this pop-up on the website that says your Microsoft Office is out of date, would you like to update it? It's a website will never ask you, never be able to figure out even what software you're running on your computer or on your mobile device. A website will never ask you those questions. So again, the first question you need to ask yourself is, who's asking? See, I'm browsing, I'm on a website. This is not the Microsoft update application that is asking me this question. You see that quite a bit. Or you will often see a website that says, oh, you've been infected with this virus. Click on this link to clean it. A website has no access to your computer and has no idea what's on it, what applications are running, what malware you may or may not have. It's just trying to trick you to click on a link so that you can download malicious software and install that unknowingly on your computer. So again, the first question is who's asking? If you have, for instance, your operating system and say all your Microsoft applications set to auto update, uh, you'll never be asked for an update. So if something is asking you to update and you know you set everything to auto update, then you know that's likely fraudulent. That's a scam of some kind. So yes, I do worry that software updates could be fraudulent, but you just have to have some situational awareness and understand where your software updates are coming from, or who's asking the question for you to update.
Cool. Thanks,
Uh,
Chuck.
okay, let's see. What's the next one here? Is public Wi-Fi danger if you are only browsing the internet? Uh, Potentially, yes, uh, because there are a lot of services that are running on all of our devices that are communicating across the internet, any internet connection that the device may have, that you don't know about necessarily. Your social media may be updating, your email will be updating in the background. There's all of these things happening on all of our devices, hundreds of times, thousands of times a second, that are communicating across the internet if it has an internet connection. So it doesn't matter necessarily that you're just using a browser. Your device is doing a lot more things than you even realize.
Wow.
Well, how do you find a good VPN? How much do these cost? We covered that a little bit, but I'll
Hmm.
repeat. Do your research on a VPN. Again, I would just start off at a reputable source like Consumer Reports or PCMag.com and look at their comparisons. They'll usually compare 10 or 20 of the most common VPN services. And depending on the service and the tier of service, you maybe spend 10, 20 bucks a month on a VPN. It's not that big of a hit, especially uh, if you know you're going to need to use a public Wi-Fi for whatever reason. Um, Again, a great alternative to that is just use the Wi-Fi that's built into your smartphone. Most smartphone plans will have a hotspot option these days. Uh, they'll give you a certain amount of data per month, or depending on your tier, sometimes it's unlimited. Um, Sometimes it's a pay per gig, that type of thing. Uh, but that's the most secure way to avoid using a public Wi-Fi. Um, and again, you can use, if you have a VPN, then fine, using a public Wi-Fi is as safe as it's going to get. But make sure you're running that VPN while you're doing it. A good VPN app and good VPN service will actually warn you while you're trying to connect. If you're trying to connect to an insecure public Wi-Fi, it'll say, "Hey, before I connect, do you want me to turn on the VPN?" And it'll flip on the VPN for you, either automatically or prompt you to do so before you connect. So it's a good fail-safe. All good VPN services have that kind of built in. And yeah, free access to consumer reports through the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Maybe you do. I didn't know that. So that's really good. If you're going to do some research into any of these services online, Consumer Reports is usually one of the most fair and unbiased sources out there. And if you can get a free access via the library, that's fabulous. I had no idea. I know there's lots of free music and videos you can get from them, but I didn't know Consumer Reports had a thing. So that may well be true. I don't know. But if it is, that's awesome. Um, let's see. This is kind of a repeat, but what if we use the internet at a public Wi-Fi without a VPN, but we're not on our email or banking sites? Would others still be able to access our past usage of our device? Potentially, yes. Again, I wouldn't. There are so many issues with using an unsecured, unencrypted public Wi-Fi that I just wouldn't do it at all. Um, it's given the number of vulnerabilities that could be out there, I wouldn't do it at all. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no safe way to use an unsecured, unencrypted public Wi-Fi. Okay, and just keep in mind, by the way, that this might be related to this next question. Is proximity needed to fraudulently tap into my home Wi-Fi? Well, that's with a lot of these technical questions, the answer is both yes and no. Yes, because your Wi-Fi signal only travels, 300, 400, 500 feet at most from your house. And everyone knows this too, because when you're connecting, say, to Wi-Fi at home, oftentimes, and when you see the list of other Wi-Fi devices that are in the neighborhood, in mine, there are 27 other Wi-Fis that are within range of my house. Occasionally, you find one that's unsecured, that's unencrypted. You don't have to type the password in to log in, and that is a danger, of course. So lock down your home Wi-Fi with a password, and that generally means that the system is scrambled, it's encrypted, and no one can intercept the information that's coming to or from your Wi-Fi access point and your computer or device. So yes, proximity is needed, but there are other ways for hackers to hack into your home network. So make sure that you've got a decent router, fairly up-to-date router at home. If you've been supplied one by, say, Spectrum or Fios or something like that, if it's 10 years old, it's getting pretty old at this point. So I would ask them to replace that device with a newer one. But keep in mind that we're not talking about when hackers are out there and doing these data breaches, they're targeting the biggest pools of information like banks, insurance companies, government institutions, social media outlets. You probably will never be personally targeted unless somebody in your neighborhood is really technically savvy and has some type of beef with you. So I wouldn't worry about being personally targeted. When we talk about hacking, we're talking about the larger data breaches. Personally, I wouldn't worry about being personally targeted. Okay, let's see. Yeah, if you're friends with someone, they get hacked, can you get hacked too? Well, the short answer is no, but potentially, if you're fooled into by some message or note from your friend whose account has been compromised, they well, if they're compromised, they may have access to some of your personal information, because if they're logged in as your friend's Facebook account, they can see all your friends' friends, and that includes you and whatever information that you've put on your Facebook account, for instance. So there is some access that they can gain, but I wouldn't call that being hacked necessarily, because your account isn't compromised, but and they have only have access to the information that you have put on Facebook. So again, put a minimal amount on your account, as much as you need. Your friends know where you live. Your friends know your phone number. They don't need to look it up on Facebook. Do you recommend using antivirus software for an Android cell phone using Chrome? That's a really good question. And the Android operating system runs on a lot of different devices, like Samsung and LG phones and Motorola and a bunch of others. It's designed, and of course Google's own phones as well. Google created Android in order to have a foothold in the mobile market, and they allow any company that makes any type of device to use that operating system, but they lock down certain parts of it because the intent behind it is for Google to have access to your information, to track you, and to sell that information in a roundabout way to advertisers. So when you're using Android, say through one of Google's phones or through a Samsung phone, you are not necessarily Samsung's customer. You are Google's product. So Android is already kind of semi-compromised by Google in that they're using it to track you, to sell to advertisers, and to make their search ecosystem, more accurate, more responsive, more personalized even to you. That is their business model. So having said that, using antivirus software on an Android cell phone using Chrome, well, the Android operating system is a bit more compromised than, say, Apple's iOS, primarily because the Google Play Store is a lot less curated. There's a lot of garbage and junk apps on the Google App Store. A lot of apps that aren't vetted properly. Tons and tons of screensavers. There's a bunch, something like 90% of the mobile malware is through Android on the market. And some antivirus software may help for Android. I don't have a ton of experience with it, so I don't want to go too far. I would say try it, see if you like it. If it slows your phone down or causes some other issues, it might not be worth it for you. But if it doesn't cause too many issues, I don't see why not. Go ahead, use the antivirus software on Android. I hope that made sense. There was a roundabout way of saying, sure, give it a shot. Can you give a fake address or other fake info? Yes, you can, depending on the say the site that you're trying to join or create an account on. A lot of people use burner emails. I've got a handful of crap emails that I use. If I'm on a site and I'm like, I think this is a legit site, but it's not something I completely trust, I'm going to use one of the free emails I got with Spectrum or the old Roadrunner account that I used to have, things like that. I use that just for stuff I'm not 100% sure about because it's not my primary email, doesn't contain my name or anything like that. And it's not an email I really care about. And if I shut it down tomorrow, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. So that's often a good way to hedge your bet if you're on a site that you think might be legit, but could also be a little sketchy or compromised. Of course, the safest thing to do is don't sign into those sites at all. However, when you say fake address or other fake info, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but yeah, you can give any information you want, but I wouldn't do that to your financial institution because they'd probably be pretty angry at you for giving a fake address. But for other services that it doesn't matter, yeah, why not if you want to? If they're requiring an address, put in 123 Main Street, in Walla Walla, Washington. Why not? So I think, yeah, that's basically it. I don't see any other questions. How are we doing, Katie? We're
We're
just
a
over
little
time, I
over
think.
on, we are just over time. I'm seeing one more question in a comment that I think just came to me privately. Do you have time for these?
Sure. Yeah, if
Okay.
everyone else has time.
Yeah, and if people have to hop off, that's fine. We are recording. So this question is, should you use the chip or tap option when using your credit card instead of sliding the card because of the skimmers? There's a second part to that question, but I'll stop there.
Yes, use the chip if it's an option. The chip is much more secure than the magnetic strip. Magnetic strip basically contains all of your card information that anyone could use to say, call up Amazon and make a credit card purchase or something like that. The chip can't be skimmed necessarily. At least I'm not aware of any skimmer for a chip. The skimmer works on the magnetic strip. And pretty soon we're not going to see those magnetic strips anymore, probably 5 years, maybe. The chip is essentially replacing that because it's much more secure than the mag strip.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. The second part to that question is, are Erie County libraries safe to use the Wi-Fi? Thanks, great program.
Yes, if they have a login, if any Wi-Fi that has a login, and you will see on the on your mobile device, on your laptop, whether it's Windows or Mac, the little Wi-Fi icon, if you click on it, it shows you which Wi-Fi you're connected to. There's usually a little padlock next to the ones that are encrypted and secured. So if it requires a password to log in to connect to the Wi-Fi, you can be 99% sure that it is encrypted. But make sure that that little encryption symbol, usually it's a padlock, appears next to the Wi-Fi system that you're connected to.
Okay.
That
Thank
makes
you, Chuck.
sense?
Yeah, it definitely did. So there's a comment, and then I just have my own question right for the end. But so this says, great presenter always gives a clear and well organized lecture. Thanks so much.
Gee, thank you.
I echo that. And if we have time, I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about cookies, because I feel like you can't go on a website nowadays without cookies popping up and those giving permission for that. So can you just give a quick
Oh
high
yeah,
level?
that's a good question. I kind of skipped over some of that stuff, and maybe I shouldn't have. But the more you try to encapsulate everything with this topic, the bigger and bigger it becomes. It starts to get unmanageable, and we could spend 3 hours here. And in fact, if you are a cybersecurity expert, um, you're not really an expert because everybody is a specialist. Uh, there's there's portions of this whole security ecosystem that you have to specialize in because it's so broad and can be so complex. Uh, so cookies. Cookies are essentially bits of information that a website will take and store for you so that, say, next time you visit the site, it has some of that information. Like say a website has a certain color scheme that you could choose that you liked, or uh, this if you check the when you're logging into a website, you can check a box sometimes that says "Keep me logged in," so that next time you visit the site, it'll say, "Oh, okay, I know who you are. I'll just log you right in." Well, how does it know who you are? It has to be some bit of information, some some alphanumeric code of some kind that's unique to your account or that's somehow associated with your account that the website can tell who you are. It's like, oh, you're just returning, I'll just log you right in. And that information is stored in a little uh, invisible area called your browser cache. It's right on your device, whether it's your laptop, smartphone, whatever. There's a little folder that's usually not, usually hidden. It's not one of those things that's accessible, like right on your desktop or something like that. But it is a place where that website will store that data and give it to the website next time that you show up, and will, for instance, log you in again. The problem is, of course, you can store a lot of information in cookies, and some websites will use cookies to track you. Uh, if you see a lot of ads on certain websites, on maybe a news site that you frequent, and have you ever seen those ads start to say you were looking for, I don't know, iron skillets or something like that, and the next thing you know, kitchenware, cookware is showing up on every damn site that you're browsing everywhere else. Um, that is tracked via cookies. There's a cookie that's placed, say, for instance, on your computer by Amazon or Facebook or whoever, that is then available to be read by another website that you've browsed to that says, oh, okay, I know who this person is. Lately, they've been looking at cookware on X and X site. I'm going to deliver a bunch of ads to them through my ad partners that pay me to advertise on my site to show them what they've been shopping for recently. So that's kind of in a nutshell how the whole advertising and tracking system works via cookies. If you've ever opened up a private window on your browser, none of those cookies are accessible anymore. It's like you've cleared out all your cookies just for that session. And if you go to the same websites and look at the ads, they're generic ads now. They have no access to your information. So you can clear out all your cookies. If you want, most browsers will allow you to clear cookies on a site-by-site basis. If there's a handful of sites that you don't want your cookies to be available from, sometimes it's hard to tell because these third-party services have weird domain names which you might not know about, like SuperClick or whatever. It's like, what is that? I was never there. It's like, no, this is a third-party advertising site that you didn't know you visited. You didn't really visit it, but the ads were served by those onto the site you were visiting. So sometimes it's hard to clear out your cookies a la carte, one by one. It's best to just blow them all out, erase them all on occasion, especially if you feel like you're being tracked, and if you're just sick of the cookware ads following you around at every other site. So hopefully that kind of gave you an overview of generally what cookies are and how they work, both for good and for bad.
I think that was perfect, Chuck. Thank you very much for that. And sometimes I swear I'm just thinking about something and I see an ad and I'm like, how did you know that? That's so
Yeah.
weird.
But keep in mind too, if you clear out all your cookies, you may have to re-log into certain sites, for instance, next time you go visit, because all of that information will be erased as well, and the site won't know who you are. So you just have to log in again. So cookies are, again, convenient, but they can also be used to do things you don't want, especially the tracking stuff.
Definitely. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for your time this morning. This was really wonderful information. Tons of questions that you answered for us. And to everyone who's on, thank you for your time. We appreciate you. Okay, so I hope everyone. Oh, lately
Oh,
my computer has increased junk mail up to 100 each day. They're always finding us, folks.
yeah, I know. I would say check with your email provider and see if you can adjust your spam settings to capture more of that junk mail. And oftentimes, depending on how you get your mail, if you get it in an email app, there are spam settings on there too. Your junk mail settings is on there. You might want to increase the sensitivity a bit. Every service, every app's a little different, so I can't really give any specific instructions on that.
Oh, still good advice. Thank you, Chuck.
So why don't we end with that? That sounds good to me.
All right, we're done. Everyone, enjoy your day. Bye.
Bye-bye.